Hi, I'm Meta Spencer. Today is the last Sunday in March of 2025, and so it's time for our Global Town Hall. And we do this, Project Save the World produces such a show on the last Sunday of every month. And we edit them and we post them on three different sites on YouTube, on our website, and now on Substack. So if you want to watch them on Substack, you can go there and you can see our videos and you can listen to our audios. And if you want to join, if you want to subscribe, we encourage you to do that. You can go make a free subscription, which will mean that you get notices and that you'll actually receive the videos every time we do a show. But that's if you want to do it for free. But if you want to also read the little articles that we create about each show, that you need to probably you'll want to become a paying subscriber because there'll be a sort of a preview that you can see the first couple of hundred words of the essay. But to watch the whole thing, you need to be a subscriber, which is $8 US per month. And we think that there are going to be other things that we'll be posting there, which will make it really worthwhile for people. And we have, for the people who want to become paying subscribers, we have twice a month additional meeting with a Q&A session and opportunity to meet some of the speakers and ask them follow-on questions and so on. So there are various perks involved in becoming a paying subscriber. That's new to us. So we only have a handful of people so far who become paying subscribers, but we think that a lot of people will want to when they see how wonderful the treats are. Okay, it's now 2 o'clock exactly, and I'm going to open the door.
Hey, how are you?
Okay, good to
Good.
see you. Wonderful. I just finished my first spiel trying to explain to people why they should become paying subscribers to the Substack.
I did.
I know you were very early. Thank you for that. That's good. Okay, so we'll be having more things than actually the videos, and occasionally more things. I put up something last night that I got, which I found very interesting. Gordon Edwards is our one of the board of directors, one of the directors of Project Save the World, and he's a very prominent authority on all things radiation. He knows the science and the politics of radioactive contamination and dangers, as well as, of course, nuclear weapons. So he had sent out a very interesting email to his list yesterday, talking about Greenland, because a few years ago, the Physicians for Global Survival, or what was it called here in Canada at that time, had a different name, but now it's the International Physician for the Prevention of Nuclear War Canada branch. And they changed their name to that, more complicated thing, but it tells the relationship. Anyway, they sent him to Greenland because at that time there were plans to mine uranium there, and the physicians wanted the Greenlanders to know about the physical risks of exposure from uranium mining. So he went there, and they have prohibited uranium mining. Well, that's relevant now, it turns out, because when you mine for rare earths, they're always mixed in with uranium and thorium. And so you get two for the price of one, whether you like it or not. And so Gordon's theory, and he makes a good case for it, is that the real reason that the U.S. wants to own Greenland is for the rare earths, which are very important for modern technological devices, cell phones to all kinds of other things, and which are very scarce. And China at the moment has almost a monopoly on it. So he thinks they want Greenland for their rare earths. And now the Greenlanders are sticking by, so far, their intention to not have uranium mining, which would presumably preclude having rare earth mining as well. Anyway, I found that interesting, so I posted it as part of our series on our Project Save the World Substack column or newsletter, I guess they call them, something like that. Did you get it, or did you notice?
Not yet. I haven't had a chance really to look through my emails.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Well, anyway, I think the idea
I will be doing that.
is very interesting. So, how's everything in California?
Well, we're pretty freaked out over the political situation. So, other than that, everything's kind of okay. I spent this morning, very early in the morning, going on this hike, and there was a big blue heron, beautiful. And we just watched it, and we were very close to it as it was hunting. And I have some great pictures. It's really.
Is that something that you would expect in
Yeah, it depends. Yeah, they are here. They are definitely here. You don't see them a lot, and they're not, I don't think they're endangered, but they are around. They're very impressive.
Well, I've certainly never seen one. Of course, when I lived in California, I never went anywhere.
Oh,
except to the library.
well, that's important. That's good.
Well, I was a student most of the time, and I did teach, so there were some limits on that.
Mm-hmm.
So we can talk a bit. I'm interested in your necklace. Is that turquoise, or what are those pretty stones?
Are you talking to me?
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. This is turquoise. This is all turquoise. I wear lots of turquoise. Oh, these are all pretty much from New Mexico.
Okay. Well, it was very nice.
Yeah.
Okay, yeah. And here's Peter Carter. Hello, Peter. How are you?
Hi there.
Hello.
Basically, what we mainly do is record and follow all the climate change indicators. I've just actually completed a project that may interest you. I don't like the idea of AI, but although I presented these indicators at many conferences, the scientists don't seem to be very interested, or they don't seem to think that I've got them right. So I resorted to AI. I found an AI which was specifically for research and is absolutely amazing, I must say. I ran every single indicator through it, and every single indicator is, as I've been saying for a long time, record high and accelerating. But more than that, every single indicator is aligning, as they say, with the very worst case scenario. So that is the situation that we and the planet in the future are in.
Okay, well, I want to hear more about that. I myself use AI about 10 times a day. And I find that it's really good for most things. Information, general information, whether it's, how much baking powder to put in my biscuit, or where to get the kind of color lipstick that I want, or all the way to what is the capital of Afghanistan or whatever. And as source of information and also editing, I can put in a badly written article and it will come out sparkling clean, really nicely edited. I'm amazed and impressed by both GPT-4 and now this new DeepSeek. However, the thing I find that disappoints me is that it doesn't seem to be good at helping me solve my computer problems. You know, when I have don't know how to use a particular new app or something of that kind, I want support. And of course, if you go to the help desk of whatever app you're dealing with, they're not really very good at all. I don't find that you get much help that way at all. And they make it difficult for you to get to them and so on. But it's easy to reach GPT-4 or DeepSeek and very quickly, and they'll give you instantaneous answers. But most of the time they're wrong. They don't seem, and I think the reason is they can't keep up with the changes that these software manufacturers keep making. I think 90% of the changes are unnecessary and quite annoying, but they keep doing it, and I wish we could make them stop putting in unnecessary changes because it just makes it very inconvenient for the user. And the problem is that the poor old AI can't keep up with it. So the advice they give is always or 90% of the time wrong. Is that your experience?
But I am going to say that AI is I think it's very problematic because what it's doing is taking information that people have put in that have been previously uploaded articles or whatever. So it's essentially regurgitating and putting together things, sometimes out of context and sometimes not accurate. And I think that it's important to have what's called supervised AI, where people actually fact check things. Anyway, but I don't know if that's answering your question. Having said that, I do use it for some of the photography I do for the wildlife.
I find it very accurate for, 90% of the time, 98% of the time, it's quite accurate for most general information or for help with editing facts. Occasionally especially if somebody's died, they might not know that the person they're talking about has died or has moved from one university to another or something. But it's the technical information that they're not good at. Peter, and hello, Lynn Adamson. I'm glad to welcome you to our meeting here.
Hello, I'm here as much as I can be at the moment. I'm also entertaining my cat, who is very needs to be able to move around. But I'm listening.
Okay.
I'm here. I'm not sure. Do you have a particular theme for today?
No, we don't have themes. We talk about whatever's on people's minds.
Oh, okay.
So far, what has come up is AI, although I think I'm monopolizing the conversation. Peter, do you agree with my impression about the things that AI is good for and unreliable with?
Well, I experimented with a few of them for this project, and I ended up with one called SCET_, and it's one that's designed for researchers. And I mean, it was incredibly good. I mean, there was everything it said was I knew, of course, was accurate. It was up to date. It gave references, and it provided a lot more information actually than I asked for. Information that I knew, but I didn't necessarily ask for it. But it was all information that was very important. So it really is fantastic.
Well, now that's a brand. I don't know, they're not called brands, but whatever they are, that I had heard of before. Say again, it's not by
I can send it to you in an email. SCET_.
Can you put it in the chat? There's a little chat window. Can you put it in there, Peter?
Yeah, that's a good idea.
Okay.
Do you pay
So
for
I better check that I've got it right, hadn't I? Okay, I will.
it? Is it something you paid for? Free. Because I pay, I think $30 or so a month for GPT-4, but DeepSeek is free. And you know what I did this time? I had it write an essay about one of the forums that I did on the EMP bomb, the electromagnetic pulse bomb, and it was a very important forum and very technical.
Oh,
So
yeah.
I had DeepSeek write the essay describing what we talked about, and it really did a good job. So I'm publishing it in Peace Magazine with a byline saying by DeepSeek. I can hardly wait to see how people will react. The whole magazine subscription audience will come down on my head for doing such a thing, I think. Yes, Marilyn, even Marilyn's frowning. Okay.
No, I'm wondering, I'm hearing all this stuff going on, like hammering and all sorts of weird noises.
Lynn Adamson is here and she's doing something with her cat. So
Oh.
she's making some kind of noise.
I'm here.
Oh,
My cat needs to play.
Are you hammering, Lynn?
My cat needs to play.
Oh,
I have a little toy,
okay.
a little tunnel. It's cats when they're bored can be difficult. So
Yes, I'm a cat behaviorist. I'm a certified cat behavior consultant.
are you? Oh, that's
Yeah,
so
so
interesting. Sometimes I think I need one for this cat, but anyways, yeah.
That's
So
her day job, right?
Right, that's my day job.
that's your day job, right? Well, I've been amazed at some of the things that AI can write and does write. Someone did a relative or friend of one of our folks on our walk. We did the walk in September in Nova Scotia, the Peace Walk for 2 weeks from Pugwash to Halifax. Someone in our circle asked AI to do a kind of a radio conversation about the project. It was so good. I don't know what the AI program drew on to do it, but it was so good. It was absolutely just what we were trying to do with our walk. Everything was so good. I didn't know at first where he'd come from. I thought maybe it was actually a program that had been recorded. And then I found out that it was created by AI. So I don't know. I don't know. The world's going to change with everything being done with AI. I have to say, I don't know.
Well, but we have enormous resistance. There's going to be, I think this is going to be instead of social class struggle in the 21st century, it's going to be the struggle between technology and MAGA or some other back to previous, more comfortable, old-fashioned style of living, which I have fully understand the resistance to high-tech stuff, especially, well, not especially AI. I think especially the situations that exist now where they, if you go online, it's not AI. You have to maneuver and navigate through page after page of forms and fill out this, and you got to find the little arrow that you're supposed to click, and I go crazy. I mean, I just absolutely cannot do it. So I pay somebody who helps me, and but my impression is that whenever I actually get in touch with AI and can talk to it and say what's my problem, she's usually wrong. I call it she because I think it's very much female.
Oh my!
But she's usually wrong about the technical things. But she's so nice. you know, and so supportive, and she's trying so hard. And if I tell her, no, you got it wrong, she said, oh, yeah, I see what you mean. I'm sorry, let's try this other thing. Tell me how it's going, okay? And that kind of thing. It's so much nicer because these other forms that you have to fill out, they'll give you, you know, you're supposed to know how to do it, and they hide the help desk, so you can't find the button to click so that you can get support. They don't want anybody to know that.
Mhm.
And they make it so difficult. And then they'll say, is your problem this, give you a list of 10 things. Your problem has to be one of those. Well, if your problem isn't one of those, then too bad, because there's no alternative, you know, and it's so frustrating. But I think if they actually turn over those processes to AI, it may be better, but still probably isn't going to work because they keep changing the the interface or whatever. And so, that's really what Doge is all about. That's what Elon Musk is doing. He's sacking all those people, clearing out the jobs, closing these things, partly because he's just nasty and Trump is so nasty, but also because he thinks what he's doing is making room for AI, and that 5 years from now, all of the government agencies will be run by AI. And I think it's an interesting question because the government agencies now are so inefficient and so screwed up, and they have all these privacy concerns, so you can't move from one piece of information to another, and so on. So I think if they actually do turn it over to AI, it might be better, but we don't know yet.
It's the motivation behind all these things is not positive. I mean, to me, the whole question is, are we trying to create a more democratic, more participatory world? And I don't see that with the MAGA.
Absolutely not.
So
No,
they're
Absolutely not.
I couldn't figure out why they voted for Trump, but then somebody explained to me that 2/3 of American voters would be non-college educated, right? The maximum they would have had is high school. And they watch Fox News, I suppose, and they really aren't exposed to the kind of information. And that would be true on the climate issue too, because Peter, I know you do such excellent educational work on YouTube videos on the climate emergency, and that is my what I'm working on right now. So I'm trying to get people in the different wards in Toronto to learn about our climate plan, which is called Transform TO, and go and talk to their councillors about it, because the new version, the next 5-year plan, is coming up in June to City Council, and we want the councillors to support it. And we want it to have bold measures because, as you can imagine, Peter, thinking about I just looked at the modeling reports the staff have done about how much reduction we've achieved so far. And as you can imagine, it's not coming down at the level it needs to drop. So we're putting a lot of effort into emissions performance standards for buildings. So people will need to retrofit, get heat pumps, to big changes there, as well as the green building standards. But, it just becomes more and more difficult. We had provincial government, Ford, is trying to close bike lanes, which are how we get people out of their cars, one of the ways. And also robbed $1 billion from the TTC budget by cutting the gas tax. So the income is not there for transit. So we're fighting really retrograde moves. And so the question is, does the public have any idea? Well, people don't know that we're about to go off a cliff. We're about to go off a bit of a cliff when, as species collapse, as temperatures continue to rise, it's not even counting the flooding that's going to happen, because that's going to take time. It'll take over decades to happen, I suppose. But we're going to see food, loss of food, high prices of food, and they like to keep blaming that on anything but the climate, which is, kind of odd given how dependent agriculture is on a stable climate. Anyway, we're trying to do that education and mobilizing in the wards. But when I look and I see all of the attention right now being paid on tariffs, which are an issue, I understand, with the United States, a big issue economically, but we don't see that kind of attention being paid to the biodiversity crisis, the climate crisis. Like we just, and we're talking at the most 20 years down the road where our kids, grandkids will have to live with this for the rest of the century. And my big question is, how the heck do we get this talked about in the media, and not just as a marginal thing, like we have What on Earth on CBC, but that is a weekly show that's tuned into by people who are already in the know, I'm pretty sure. Anyway, that's my, you asked about what's on our minds, and that would be what's on my
I'm
mind.
delighted that you've made this, in fact, I want you to keep going, because you've mentioned the Toronto plan or something, which
Yeah.
I don't know much about it. Can you explain to all of us what this outfit is, or this
Transform TO, yeah. So cities emit 70% of the emissions come from cities, and Toronto is Canada's largest city. So you could look at our city and say we're a big contributor to Canada's emissions. I actually don't know how we'd compare to the tar sands, because I know the tar sands is a huge contributor to our emissions too. But we, since 2015, the City of Toronto developed this Transform TO plan, was adopted in 2017. That was to reduce 80% of emissions by 2050. That was the original plan in 2017. 2019.
You're going to do what, by how much?
Reduce emissions 80% from 1990 by 2050. That was the original plan.
Where would we would be by 2025? Where were we supposed to be on that trajectory?
45, well, right now it's supposed to be 45% reduced from 1990 by 2025.
How
Then
far
it's
are
supposed to be
we?
65% reduced by 2030.
Mhm.
So, because they accelerated the targets once the youth did the 2019 climate strikes and climate emergency. We got all the governments to declare climate emergency, including City of Toronto. So then they accelerated this plan, and now it's supposed to be 100% net zero by 2040. That's the current plan. So buildings is the biggest contributor. That would be gas-fired heating primarily, is the biggest contributor. Then transportation is another 35 to 38%. And then methane from waste, so green waste, food waste, and other green things like leaves and all that sort of stuff, is another 9% of emissions. So the plan was dealing with those. That doesn't include things like people flying and people buying meat and eating meat rather than plant-based diets. So it's what they felt like they could measure and do something about. And the difficult thing is getting things made compulsory. So I don't know if you followed, like, and a lot of cities are doing things like this. So Vancouver was actually pretty far ahead, especially on getting buildings off of gas. But then they elected a fossil fuel mayor, Ken Sim, that's in there right now, and he's trying to backtrack on all of that. But they had a big citizens push, and they managed to save the program to phase out gas in buildings. So citizens, when they get organized, can save these things. And what we're doing is really part of the Fossil Fuel Non-Proliferation Treaty movement, which I've been following and been part of as much as I can, and I got Toronto to adopt it. And that is that we stop any new uses of fossil fuels. We phase out existing uses as quickly as we can. And we developed the renewables for the transition. So we're working on that. But the city can't do it by itself. We need the federal and provincial government. They're much bigger financial possibilities from those levels.
Thank you. Actually, I was wondering, Peter, where are you located? Because I know you're a climate change activist as well. And I wonder if what you have to add or comment on what Lynn has been saying.
Capital city of British Columbia on the southwestern coast. So the state of Washington is next to us. I may have misheard you, Linda. How much did you say the cities produced in the way of emissions?
Almost 45% by next year. It's supposed to be 45% by next year. But most of that reduction was from the coal plants being phased out. So we are.
Okay, I did mishear you. I thought you started off by giving a percentage of the general emissions to the global emissions.
The original plan was 80% reduction in emissions by 2050, but they accelerated it, okay? The current plan is net zero by 2040, but we're nowhere near on track.
I thought you gave a percentage for emissions from cities. So
70%.
Urban emissions anyway is 50 to up to 80% of total global emissions.
Yeah, okay,
So
total
it's-
global.
it's-
Yeah. I'm not sure where that 70% figure from. That's a figure that we had for cities. But it could be 50 to 80%. Yeah, I'm sure it's not exact.
Can you give us some comparative numbers from the West Coast? My guess is, because you guys have had all those fires, that people in British Columbia are probably more conscious of climate than people in other parts of the world. I won't specify which other parts of the world, but if so, maybe there's more actual work on reducing emissions and maybe other forms of cooling the planet as well. Tell us how things are going out in your part of the world.
Oh yeah, I mean we had these absolutely unprecedented fires a couple of years ago. They were absolutely unbelievable. The emissions by the time the fires were under some sort of control was more than the total emissions of Canada. So they were absolutely huge.
Sorry, when you
It's the boreal forest that was burning. Boreal forest.
Are you saying that the emissions from the fires had been worse than the rest of the whole Canada, or what else?
Yeah,
I see.
they were greater. Yeah.
Mhm.
And the huge concern is it's the boreal forest, which is that it's the biggest forest in the world. It holds the most carbon. And when we start getting the boreal forest burning, and Russia, so in the boreal forest in Siberia, it never goes out now. There's a huge region in Siberia which burns all year round, and it just flares up in their spring and summertime. So that's a huge issue. I think it's. I really agree with you, Lynn. I think it's very, very important, and I think probably very effective to work with the schools and submit proposals and see whether they will agree. I think that's a very, very effective way of doing things.
Yeah.
You
get,
of course,
yeah. Sorry, I was going to say
ahead.
you get pushback when you make changes like congestion pricing in New York City and London, England. In New York City recently set it up. It's very popular. People like to pay more to have faster commute if they're driving, and they like the better transit that they're getting, more frequent transit. if they're taking transit. So people liked it, but Trump wants to kill it. You know, he wants to kill everything climate. So I think it's in court. But we can't get congestion pricing in Toronto because the province will not approve it. But it's very effective. You know, we have to have some things that are very effective. And the effective things are controversial because they mean change. So if we don't put gas into new buildings, and if we require people, if we make it mandatory that people retrofit their buildings, that's going to cost money. And so the construction companies and even owners and everything, they push back. So we have to build the public pressure to make it happen. And we have to show people. Every time I do a deputation, I do them often at the city, I always put in a couple of slides about how bad the situation is globally, because they don't know. The councillors don't know. They don't deal with that every day. And the citizens don't know. So when you do your deputation, it's public. It's recorded on YouTube. It's available. And it's part of our education of people, because if people don't understand the cliff we're about to go over, they won't take the measures, you know. But even things like nature-based things like gardens, we want to get solar panels on over parking lots and things like that. We want to greatly increase our renewables, but we also want to protect our ravines. And you know, there's a lot that we have to do, and every time it comes to the budget, it's like, where do we get the money? It's a perennial problem. City of Toronto is.
Well, but then there's the problem of carbon taxing too, which my impression is that it's quite effective. It's really important, but I think either it has already been, you know, with all the election going on and so on. Mm-hmm. People are making promises, and some things have actually been already implemented as laws. And I think maybe carbon taxation has already been jettisoned.
It's carbon price. It never should have been called taxation, because it was not a form of income for the government. It was all redirected back to rebates. The consumer carbon price is gone, but there's an industrial carbon price that is apparently 90% of the effectiveness. And we will need something like that because Europe does it, and they have carbon-based carbon border adjustments. So if we want to trade with Europe and so forth, we still have to do this. We have to become green to deal with Europe. It's only the United States that is so
well,
back.
Tell me though,
but it's Poilievre and the Conservatives over the entire, you know, decade or more since we've been doing some carbon pricing that have just called it a tax, and they've attacked it all the time. But if you look, when I looked at the modeling, because I'm on the co-chair of the city's climate advisory group, so we had a presentation from the modelers who are trying to figure out how we can reach our target. And they weren't caught up to the loss of the carbon price, right? If they still have it in the calculations of how we're bringing down our emissions, they have the carbon price in there. They're going to have to take out at least part of it. But, you know, people don't realize that, oh, that's helping us achieve our emissions reduction targets. It's important. Instead, people think it's costing them a fortune when it's not. What is it, 3 cents a liter on their gas or something, you know? It's because the oil and gas industry has such a huge lobbying budget. Like, they can advertise, and they do affect public perceptions.
Has it actually been changed, Canada? I mean, have they abolished it yet?
He still has, Carney still has the industrial pollution price. He's just paused it. That is what I understand, because he doesn't want it to be, like, he wants to win the election, but I think he understands that we need it. He understands that it's effective. He's a climate person, Mark Carney.
Yeah.
He's also in the World Economic Order, you know, the current order, which, you know, he's still is talking about an east-west pipeline and all that sort of stuff. So, you know, he's sort of all of the above when it comes to energy. But he hasn't ditched that altogether.
Can I ask you, you're referring to a corporate pollution tax?
People can criticize the consumer carbon price, but I spent 4 years of my life dedicated to having carbon pricing adopted, and it finally was adopted, and it was revenue neutral. So I put $140 in my bank account in April as my partial, I think it was a quarter of the year rebate. They didn't cost me anything. It was total income because I ride my bike. And I don't have a private furnace. I just rent my apartment and it's covered in my rent. So, it was total income for me and most people. It redistributed money from high carbon users, wealthy people, to moderate and lower income people. It was a 100% positive thing and that was helping. People can criticize it all they want, but it was well designed. They just didn't communicate it very well to people. So somehow the conservatives were able to hammer it for a decade
I guess the point I was making is that if you don't tax, if you don't charge a reasonable pollution fee to the fossil fuel industries, we have no future, right? We literally have no future because they've got massive projects on and on and on. There was a very interesting economic analysis done by the European Commission very recently that confirmed that the global subsidies, are at least $7 trillion a year. So we heard that a couple of years ago from the IMF. So that's just been confirmed by this other European outfit, which has done the modeling, and it comes to exactly the same thing. So we have no future unless we can compel our governments to stop killing our future, which is to stop. It amazes me that there really is no overall consistent campaign to stop fossil fuel subsidies.
Well, that's
there just isn't one. And
can you explain? There has been a talk of something like a treaty, or not a treaty, but some kind of international effort to ban fossil fuel subsidies. And I don't know where that stands. Is there an organization that's working on that? And if so, where? I don't know.
Not really. The main one is price of oil. And if you go on their website, they have it. But what I'm saying is there's no campaign on it.
I think environmental
if you dig into the Non-Proliferation Treaty, and you have to really dig into their website, there is one place where they say fossil fuel subsidies have to stop. But we're not out there demanding our governments. Our governments are literally killing our future.
Mm-hmm.
I'll give you an example of the situation we're in. Fossil fuel production, in the sense of the amount of energy that it produces, obviously has never been higher. But it's skyrocketing. They're all increasing. Oil and coal are increasing as fast or faster than they ever have. The biggest increase in fossil fuel production in the last 15 years is from coal. And yet we have people saying that, we think coal is over, it's not economic anymore. No, it's not true.
Where's that happening?
And of course, coal is sorry.
Where is coal being up?
Oh, mainly China, of course, but it's spreading with basically Chinese intent. It's huge. Australia's increasing it. Vietnam is big into it. Indonesia is big into it. South Africa, of course, is huge on coal. The main driving force, of course, is China, but also, of course, India. Is India's emissions and coal production. They're accelerating. So everything's accelerating. It's not even reversing.
Wow.
And we have the IPCC saying over and over and over, which apparently nobody has heard, that global emissions have to be put into decline at the very latest by 2025. Now, the 2020 limit, we've had that for 30 years. So here we are with the IPCC saying we cannot continue increasing. We have to put emissions into rapid decline. And they've said this over and over in the past few years, by 2025. So another context, a really, really good first-time report came out January, and it was an interesting named report. It was called Planetary Solvency. And this time, what they did was that the climate experts and the actuaries, they're the people who are professional risk analysis people. They got together and they did a proper risk assessment. There's never been a proper risk assessment. I had one published a couple of times, but that's nothing because nobody really gets it. They just stay in the journal. Anyway, they did a great job. So I can send that to you as well. And what they found was that at 2 degrees C, which of course is now unavoidable, as James Hansen and his team, that was their big paper. That was also in January. They said that 1.5 C, that's long gone. Although the scientists still say we can do it, which is absolutely absurd. But Hansen, as usually, is right. And now in this paper, he says we cannot do 2 C. Now, the insolvency risk assessment estimated that at 2 degrees C, we have over 2 billion people being killed by climate change. Over 2 billion. And at 3 degrees C, and 3 degrees C is where our governments are sending us, right? We've heard that over and over and over, 3 degrees C. That is 4 billion people killed by climate change. It seems to me, and I think back at the Copenhagen big summit, that was a huge one. Everybody believed that, we were going to do something real. We were going to get emissions down. You'll remember this. And everybody who was involved, and there were a lot of people involved all over the world, we all knew this was a global survival issue. We all knew that then. But somehow we seem to have forgotten about it, which is really bizarre, because as the situation gets worse and worse and worse, we seem to forget about the fact more and more that the survival of the human population and most life on Earth, that's on the line now. And it's going to be, I think one of our speakers here mentioned it, for today's children, all the children in the world, they have a hell of a future. It's just going to be hell. Because we're seeing this, right? Extreme weather events getting worse, year by year by year. So already we've condemned children to what the IPCC calls an unlivable future. It's absolutely, unbelievably terrible.
Well, listen, tell me a little bit how they do risk assessments, because you said that there hadn't been one, but you have something now. What do they do? If you were doing a risk assessment right now, what would be the procedure that you'd go through?
Well, climate change, climate disruption is an environmental health issue. And it's not treated as such at all. The IPCC, of course, they just do climate change, right? They do not do risk. There's a chapter that talks about risk. But actually, the IPCC is specifically non-risk because in its assessment, it excludes all the greatest risks. So the tipping points, the massive sources of methane and carbon feedbacks, that's not in the IPCC assessment. Everybody's been sort of complaining about it for years and years. But again, in this 2022 IPCC report, permafrost isn't in there, methane hydrate isn't in there, Methane from wetlands isn't in there, right? So the big, huge drivers of further acceleration of climate change are being missed. So obviously they don't do the risk assessment. But what the risk assessment does is it takes every single emission from every single source. That's what it does. So it's far, far more expansive and comprehensive that what the IPCC does, or what anybody else has done for that matter. The interesting thing about environmental health risk assessment is it includes the effects on human beings of coal pollution, for instance. That's not included in the IPCC because the IPCC only does climate change. So the situation as regards coal pollution is that 10 million people are being prematurely killed every year from coal pollution. Now, the most evil crime ever, year after year after year, right? The world killing people, vulnerable people, of course, obviously, with air pollution. And as we all know, of course, this has been completely unnecessary for decades, right? We haven't enough renewable clean energy to replace, way more than enough to replace all the. If we keep our emissions at what they are, right? If we maintain current fossil fuel facilities, and we have no future.
You've chosen 4 a.m. here in Australia, so I'm still waking up. So I'll be happy to chime in. The first question I would have is, if someone would please put a link to the insolvency risk assessment in the chat, that would be very helpful since I cannot find it on Google search. Is that possible?
Peter, if anybody can, it would be you. And I'm not sure what the insolvency risk assessment is. Do you know what he's saying?
It basically came out of the University of Exeter, and the UK or London Actuaries Association. That's what it came out of. I guess you could say it's the most important paper that's ever been produced. I'm trying to see whether I can get up again on my computer.
Yeah, thank you very much. I appreciate that, Peter. My second comment is that there's another tipping point, and it relates to algae in the ocean, and that is as the ocean warms, we're losing 30 to 40% of the algae in the subtropical ocean, the plankton, and we're losing up to 95% of the algae near the coastline from California to the tip of Tasmania. So this is a profound effect that was exacerbated by the International Maritime Organization banning sulfur bunker fuel because it inadvertently or intentionally resulted in a loss of cloud condensation nuclei that resulted in further planetary dimming associated with marine clouds and sea ice. So it's accelerated the warming in the ocean, and we've seen that change January 2023, and it's not, the ocean temperatures aren't going back. My third point is this. There is a department in charge of eliminating subsidies, and it's called the Department of Government Efficiency. And
no, that's the name of the thing in the U.S.
Yeah, it's and Elon Musk has sworn to eliminate all government subsidies. So let's call him on it and say, well, start with the oil subsidy, and that's $7 trillion. Put your money where your mouth is. In other words, if they're really going to make this Department of Government Efficiency, then call him on it. Say, why aren't you stopping the oil subsidies? Because he said he wanted to get rid of all subsidies. So let's start with the oil subsidy and the gas subsidy and the fossil fuel subsidies. What do you think?
The government's promised back in 1992 at the Pittsburgh G20. That was the first time they promised to eliminate subsidies. And they're still going up.
No, we just need Peter. We need people, including yourself, Peter, to call Elon out on it personally. Say, hey, Elon, you say you're going to eliminate all subsidies. Where's the fossil fuel subsidy elimination? Huh? If you're
But he's not gonna
serious
do it.
about that,
And it's all the governments in the world that have to do it.
well, it's called shame. It should
I
start.
mean, he's with
shame.
Trump, right? I mean, the
Yeah.
Trump administration
He's in a
is
position to do it.
pushing up even more oil and gas. They're the world leaders already in production of oil and gas, and of course, they're trying to kill the clean energy industry in the United States. But
Yeah,
yeah,
so
sure. I
as-
mean, it would be fun to see how Elon Musk responds to sticking
Exactly.
fossil fuel subsidies.
As an organization, we should all shame Elon Musk publicly with the fact that he's not eliminating subsidies, and he's not doing what he promised. He promised to end all subsidies, and he is not. So we need to shame him on the
But
fossil fuel.
All the governments in the world did in 19 I think it was 92.
Yeah,
And they've
92.
been, it keeps on being brought up at the G20s.
So how could we start such a movement? We would need more than 6 people signing a speech or a video or a document to the. We need to get some sort of press.
It's quite simple. All the NGOs, all the environmental NGOs have to unite, right, on a constant, strong campaign to stop fossil fuel subsidies. It's obvious, isn't it?
Exactly.
But it's not happened. But we need all the NGOs in the world to prioritize that as their number one campaign, right? Ahead of saving all creatures, which they got to continue to do. But we have no future. Our fellow creature kin, there's just been a huge paper come out on the biodiversity situation, which again they conclude is absolutely devastating. But no, our number one priority is global warming and climate change, and of course ocean disruption, as you've mentioned. Acidification of the ocean is increasing. Well, heating of the ocean is increasing at an incredible rate. Absolutely incredible.
I think the challenge, like I agree with you, you're saying, Brian, that we and Peter, we need to advertise it. And it was one of our initial things starting in 2012 to 2015. The Climate Fast groups did fasts on Parliament Hill annually for 4 years. And one of our asks was ending fossil fuel subsidies. And they actually promised that they would in 2015, the Liberals, when they got elected. That's the platform they got elected on. And they promised again in 2019, and they promised again in 2021. But they haven't. And the problem is we don't have the money to run a campaign, that the oil and gas industry has the money to run advertising campaigns across the country, and they do. And they are affecting people's perceptions. People think it's unrealistic to get off of oil and gas. People think we're going to need oil and gas for a long time because that's what they're being told in this advertising. It's very hard to counter that when we can't really get the media, and I'm talking about mainstream media, because I think you can find it on alternative media if you look, but on mainstream media, to tell people about it. And even if you look at those articles that I put in there, all about how Trump is going to, trying to destroy the renewable energy industry in favor of fossil fuels, there is nothing. I haven't read every word of it, but I don't think that they cover the subsidies that they are going to oil and gas. But one of the ways they subsidize it is by having no price on pollution of the atmosphere. So, it's a challenge. Like, yes, we need to challenge them. I like what you're saying. Maybe we need to have the Democrats do that, but which Democrats would do that? The Justice Democrats, potentially, because they've pledged not to take money from oil and gas. So I don't know, maybe we need to put our heads together with them and see how do they try to get rid of those subsidies,
I'd
given
like
the
to know
context.
how you count a subsidy. Nobody sits there and writes a check to Shell Oil or any. They don't.
Oh, they do.
Yeah. Well,
They actually
yes, but I
do.
mean, I think what happens is subsidies in the form of things like pipelines or
Tax breaks.
non-collecting of certain taxes
Yeah.
that should be taxed or something like that. In other words, it must be that to figure out how much they're getting by way of subsidies, and I think Peter said, is it $7 trillion globally? The fossil fuels are being subsidized. How do they calculate that? What kind of numbers do they put into their computer system to make
The IMF and this recent one, there are two sources of subsidies. What we've always called direct subsidies. That's basically governments giving money, giving grants, letting a fossil fuel corporation avoid tax, etc., etc. But by far the largest amount, and this is why what Lynn said really just now is absolutely important, is that we've had agreements for decades that pollution will be priced, right? So I think that's what you just referred to. I guess I should make myself clear that when I say stop fossil fuel subsidies, I mean to the corporations. That's where the pollution comes from, right? We can encourage consumers to pollute a little bit less, but that's not really going to make any difference if we allow the fossil fuel corporations to continue polluting more and more and more and more. So the big chunk of the IMF subsidies is what's called externalities.
Yeah.
We've known externalities forever. Externalities actually the number one theme of the 2006 UK Stern Commission report. That was their big theme. So it's not like we haven't heard about it. But my point is we can use these, right? We can use the planetary solvency. We can use the IMF and this other recent one, stop subsidies, as levers to force our governments to respond. But the other lever we need to force our governments to respond is they have to hear how bad this is. When I say there's no future, there's no future. The IT6 assessment said, quote, several times, there is a narrow window of opportunity to secure a livable future. Now, when the conservative IPC says something like that, we're looking at the end of everything. Which is why what you've been doing, Meta, is so absolutely brilliant and important beyond anything.
I'd simply like to add that both the left parties and the right parties have been owned by fossil fuel companies because they contribute to both sides. And if they contribute to both sides, it's very simple. They just pay this political tax and then they get these trillions of dollars of subsidies, including probably the biggest one, as you mentioned, is the non-passage of the Citizens Climate Lobby carbon fee and dividend, because you have to pay to pollute, and they are polluting. And there has to, they even do their internal counting for the price on carbon. They just pay themselves. They don't pay the citizens that they're harming. So we need to eliminate fossil fuel subsidies, and the claimed role of the Department of Government Efficiency is to eliminate all subsidies. So we need to call Elon Musk on it individually in social media. David Fenton says that what happens on your phones determines what happens in the world. And that means the leading way to get heard these days is on social media. So by becoming fluent on social media, by getting the word out and these short messages, that's how we begin the public relations campaign. And we must, and support, at the very least, the Citizens Climate Lobby in their effort to pass the fee and dividend globally. But even more so, there are direct subsidies, and we see them across the world that are subsidizing the continuance and increase of the fossil fuel industry today.
David Fenton, there's a little video from just 4 weeks ago, David Fenton, so I'll put that one in the
But no,
chat.
dear,
How do
the
watch
chat, the viewers of the video do not see the chat until I put it up for them, which only 5 people ever look at later. So if you want to say something, you actually have to say it. So you're welcome to say it, but I want to greet 2 other people who have joined us. Alexei Prokorenko has been sitting quietly waiting for a chance to say hello from Warsaw, I think.
That's right.
And for a minute, I think I saw, yes, Charles David Tauber is in Vukovar, Croatia. So I want to greet both of you because we've been talking climate the whole time, but indeed there are other things, other issues in the world. And I want to maybe give the floor for a minute to Alexei and tell us how things are in Poland and what news you have to share with us. Hi.
Well, hello. Thank you. Thanks for having me here. And thanks for the chance to see all of you. Really, really great. A great opportunity to talk. And if we don't have the climate, we don't have anything. So probably it's quite logical that that we have so much time dedicated to climate, because it's really it's been quite disconcerting the way the climate might be treated in the upcoming 4 years. Maybe you've talked about that already. That drill baby drill approach is kind of making me a bit puzzled. On my end, everything is okay. I'm just on a personal note. I feel very safe here in Poland. I am trying to find ways to help Ukrainians here, the ones that use Warsaw as their window to the rest of the world, to flee the war. I'm trying to give them all kinds of assistance I can. I don't have too many ways to do that, but I'm trying. Well, as for the war, it's been 3 years that it's been around, and I'm a bit pessimistic. So it shouldn't have happened.
Absolutely.
It's just too long. Too long.
What is public opinion doing in Poland? Have people changed their values, or are people becoming as discouraged or pessimistic as you? Or I think I read, and you may correct me, I could have imagined this or something, but didn't I see that Poland was actually eager to have nuclear weapons stationed on its soil to in response to what they see as very bad news from Putin? Did I see that right or not?
Well, I guess it's quite a long conversation so far. So it's been out there for, I guess, a couple of years. There were talks about placing or deploying certain radars in Poland, and also nuclear weapons. So bringing them kind of closer from Germany to Poland, closer to the border. And I think, well, of course, the perception is mixed, as always in any democracy. So if there is like 99% support for something or close to that, I would be concerned. So there's lots of discussion, lots of debate. Some people see that they need to find a way to fend off a possible Russian aggression. Others are afraid that this nuclear weapon, even if not owned by Poland, which it will not be, because it's the way it is. Germany doesn't own the nuclear weapons that Americans keep on their territory. So this might make Poland a target for a putative or tentative nuclear attack, and some people are concerned about it. So there are mixed opinions. But Poland is arming very heavily. I guess it's NATO's, I guess, top military spender in terms of percentage of GDP. Like it's 5% right now, and there's a huge overhaul of weapons. So the government buys tanks from South Korea, from other places. They produce some of their own weapons of their own making, and so the awareness of a possible the historical experiences are very vivid. Trying to make kind of build a bridge to what Charles Tauber is researching. So these traumas are vivid here. The memory of the wars, of Russian aggression, of Russian communist occupation of 40 years. So people don't need to be persuaded to buy into that.
Charles, bring us up to date on life in Vukovar.
Well, there are a lot of things to say. First of all, I don't know how, I assume that everybody is aware of the absolutely outrageous action of the London police yesterday in going into a Quaker meeting and arresting 6 women for planning a demonstration. That's basically what it comes down to.
British police where? I haven't read the news.
You haven't read the news. Please do read it. I mean, the Quakers have always been a pacifist organization that worked against violence in their entire history since the 1600s. And this is the first time in living memory that that the police came into a Quaker meeting. The levels of traumatization are very high everywhere. We're continuing to work with deserters from the Russian army and from various places. They're having great difficulties getting asylum in various countries. The European Union is not really accepting them. It's the entire traumatization thing is a complete mess. Nobody knows. A lot of people here are very much afraid that we're going back 100 years to the 1920s and 30s and going into those kinds of, how shall I say it, those kinds of scenarios.
A couple of weeks ago, I talked with Mary Kaldor. I did a talk show that actually I'm putting the information in the transcript in the current issue of Peace Magazine, or the upcoming issue. And one of the things she told me to look into and try to set up is apparently she was part of, or maybe orchestrated, a discussion among a bunch of people about the situation of people largely in Russia who are opposing the war. And they had something, I think they formed a group called People First. I can even put the link in when I post all the chats. I'll put it there, but you won't be able to see it until I post the chats afterwards. Anyway, I wonder if you know anything about that. It also included some academics, for example, Timothy Snyder and I think Marcy Shore. There are a couple who've just migrated from, they're professors at Yale and have moved just to Toronto because they believe, as Timothy Snyder certainly would argue, that that we're in the throes of beginning fascism, and they don't want to live in a country that's fascist. Anyways, Marcy Shore was one of the people in this panel discussion that I didn't see, but that Mary was involved with. Do you know anything about that group of people, Charles, or
I don't.
other group of people
I know
in
of
Russia?
I don't. I know of a group, and Alexei, I don't remember the exact name, but it's something like people in the forest, which
Yeah.
yeah, which is leading people out of out of the of Russia and into quote unquote safe places. And this is going on. People are trying to get asylum all over Europe. There's one guy. There are several here in Croatia. They come across through Bosnia. That's another situation that is just about to explode because Putin is very friendly with the head of the Serb entity of Bosnia, and in fact is shielding him from prosecution for lack of following the Bosnian Dayton Agreement. So it's on top of which there are going to be elections all over the Balkans, which is going to be another mess, or local elections. So this is quite a mess. And also, we've seen, and I think I mentioned this last time as well, that a lot of the stuff from the wars of the 90s, the torture, the abuse has not, in fact, been solved and has not really even been attacked properly. So there are a lot of active women's groups, for example, trying, but there is absolutely no money for it. People like us are having great difficulty finding funds. Yeah, that's that situation. Then there's the whole African situation. In Nigeria, people can't afford food. We're coming into contact with them. I could go on for another half.
Charles, I have one sort of offbeat question.
Sure.
We've had conversations about whether or not we can really solve global problems by therapy with individuals. And I've argued that there are just too many individuals and you just can't get around to doing the therapy fast enough to really make any difference. I'm really interested in whether or not this new thing that I hadn't heard about, but I guess it's been around a long time. AI can do therapy. Do you know that?
Yes, I do know that.
Yeah. Well, no, if I mean, the only way we could do therapy on the type of scale that would actually make a difference in the whole psyche of the planet or of humanity would be to have everybody with a cell phone go off in the corner and commune with their AI therapist twice a day.
Okay.
Tell me whether or not that you think that's a ridiculous idea.
I don't think it's ridiculous. I think there are possibilities there. Our attitude is what we call barefoot therapy. And Alexei knows about it, and I've spoken about it here a couple of times. And certainly Lynn knows about it from years and years ago, because when we were in Toronto and working with Anne Goodman. And the idea is to teach people to have a pyramid scheme. So we teach people to teach people to teach people. And that personal interaction is great. The AI, I haven't played with it yet. I don't know what it does and doesn't do, to be quite honest with you. I know that people continually tell me that it's extremely important for them to be in touch with other people, that the personal contact, the idea of getting your emotions out, the idea of having a place to sit and work things out on a regular basis is crucial. And again, we're going back, we're talking, I could go on for a while, but the idea of talking at various levels, i.e. at the level of the individual, the level of the society, the level of the neighborhood, and so on. In the street in which I live, we have people of various ethnicities. There was a study we also have to talk about transmission of trauma. There was a study last year, or the year, I think it was last year, here of school children who are even more highly traumatized than their parents because this is being transmitted. The politicians are making all of this worse by encouraging this for political reasons. So it's a complete mess and nobody's really doing anything about it, and there isn't any money available for it. And that's one of our problems.
Okay, well, look, how many here would be willing to go off and see if you can hook up with an AI therapist and spend an hour talking about your troubles and come back and tell us what it felt like? I mean, I have had thousands of hours of being a therapy client years and years ago, but that was 40 years ago. And I'm sort of out of practice, and I don't think I even have a problem that I'm ready to go share or worry about. So if you have a problem, would you please take it to a therapist online, an AI therapist, and come back next time and tell us how it went. Anybody up for that?
I don't really have time right now to do that.
You don't have to. I'm going to get other people to
Can
do it.
I give you a little bit of information on AI?
Who's speaking?
So the International Energy Agency, the I released its annual energy demand report,
Somebody.
and
speaking, but I
the
don't know
headline
who.
was pretty shocking.
Is it
Oh.
Peter?
Okay.
Yeah, that's Peter. That's Peter.
Yeah, I
When
was trying
Peter
to.
talks, Peter doesn't look like he's talking, so I never know who's talking. I'm sorry. Okay, go, Peter. Sorry.
Okay, so I was just trying to share with you a recent report by the International Energy Agency that there was an unprecedented surge in use, which they call demand, in global energy last year, 2024.
Oh,
Some of the sectors, the increase was double the global average before, and this is more than worrying because the big surge was due to two things mainly: extreme weather events, heat waves, and that's no big surprise. But the other big one is servers, right? What do you call them? Anyway, the
Servers.
servers, I guess, and I guess AI is just a huge increase in servers, is it? Yeah. Well, here's the worrying thing: that increase was from the developed countries. So that's a very big switch around because developed countries, their energy demand has been fairly stable. And most of it, as you know, has been coming from developing countries. But now, with AI, which will just grow and grow and grow, now we have a situation in which developed countries will be using more energy and emitting more CO2. So, as I said before, I'm not in favor of AI, but I do agree it's amazing.
yeah. Well, I've heard that it's going to consume enormous amounts of electricity. Although, as I've also heard, and maybe Paul Werbos can answer whether I'm correct or not, that this DeepSeek that the Chinese came up with not only did it cheaper and easier and so on, but it also consumed very much less electricity. So if that is possible, then maybe other organizations can take a hint about how to do that. Paul, am I correct? Or do you know?
The information that trickles in to the people who call themselves experts in the Eastern United States, it's like a random number generator. I wouldn't take it too seriously one way or the other. They don't really know what's going on. It is certainly true that China is very far ahead of the United States in some of the related technologies. And that is one of the things that concerns me. But China has its own internal difficulties. The political networks are just as confusing in China as they are in the United States. But I should say, from a technical point of view, the solutions exist to this server energy problem. I know the server energy problem very, very well. The technical solutions exist. It should not be a problem. But if you read the newspapers, you'll see that it is a problem. And the reason is not because the technology doesn't exist, but because we have networks and networks of vested interests in the United States and in China, especially, but certainly in Europe. And I'm at my wits' ends trying to figure out how to bypass these sort of killer vested interests that are hurting us all.
And of course, one of the problems with AI is, as with all technologies, is that it can be used for good or evil.
Yep,
And
exactly.
a lot of it,
Exactly.
and from what I've been hearing and reading on the internet, a great deal of it is being used for evil. I think I think people such as the people who are attending this meeting really do have to look at the human rights issues that are coming up in the States and in Europe right now. I think that this is a very, very serious danger to the world. I get the ACLU newsletter every day, and they're also highlighting this. So, yeah, I mean, sorry, but to attack a Quaker meeting, which is there for pacifist reasons and pacifist strategies, to me is a descent into.
I would, if that had happened in the US, I would have said, yeah, that's just what they're doing, isn't it? But Britain, I thought, they have this Keir Starmer government, which I thought it's not in, they're not in lockstep with the Trump movement at all. That's not a right wing government, is it? It's a labor government or something, isn't it? Why would a group of people with that kind of tradition be in charge of breaking up a Quaker meeting, for Christ's sake?
Exactly. And that's all over this continent. That's all over Europe.
Well, let me add something to the story about human rights in the US, because on this show, sometimes we've had my friend Konstantin Samoilov, who's a Russian who escaped from Russia so as not to go fight in Ukraine. And he's living in Tashkent now. He has a daughter. He has 2 kids from a previous marriage who are grown. One of them is 26, works for the US government, both of them living in the US, both citizens. And he said that they expected that his daughter would apply to reunite the family and bring him and his second family, that his wife and 2 other kids, to the US as family reunification thing, which is absolutely routine. There's no question everybody gets accepted. Well, they applied, I guess, a couple of years ago when they first went to Tashkent. They just got the word, a couple of days ago, that his daughter has been turned down. his 26-year-old daughter is not able to bring the rest of the family, including him, of course, to the U.S. And and of course, it's a completely made up reason. They say they aren't sure that he's really the father, or that he's really been a father, acting as a father to them when, they're on the show half the time. They very close family. And so clearly they made this thing up, but this has to be part of the whole campaign of the U.S. government excluding migrants, and of course, especially excluding Russians. It breaks my heart because I can't do anything to help them. Do any of you have any ideas of any knowledge about such changes going on in the U.S. now, and what anybody could do to?
Yeah. The first way you can help him is, Konstantin, is to go to his Patreon site and support him with a monthly bit of support. And then secondly, they need support in order to appeal the ruling, which was illegal. If they can both get simple DNA tests like 23andMe, that's $100 each. And that will prove the patronymial line. But I saw the same thing yesterday. Konstantin's a great blogger, and he should be an example of how. I mean, there's basically no reason. The only basis they used is they claimed that Konstantin wasn't the father, which is absurd, and that can be proved with a DNA test. $200 to prove it on 23andMe.
Well, he said he's going to appeal, but what is that worth? I don't know.
23
Well, it's worth a lot.
23andMe has filed for bankruptcy.
I'm sorry to hear that, but there are several other organizations that will do a low cost, DNA test.
Mm-hmm.
Sure.
Yeah, I am sorry to hear that also.
Certainly keen to try
Well,
to
go on to Patreon. I'll drop the link and support Konstantin with $10 a month. That will make a difference.
Well,
I mean,
he's
got
continuing to
supporters.
do his work no matter what. He says he will not give up this outreach that he's doing, and bless his heart. But and he does. I don't know. Of course, he was a very prosperous, successful businessman in Russia. So probably he's not flat broke. So, but he lost his house, for example. And
they need help. And he was defunded by YouTube, and so you have to send your dollars straight to him through Patreon.
Okay, thank you. Hello, John Montgomery.
Well, hello, Meta. It's so nice to see you.
Yeah,
You're looking well.
thank you. Well, we're talking about a friend of ours. I think he's been on the show 2 or 3 times, and some of us know him in other ways. Who's a Russian who's been turned down for reuniting his family in the U.S. So we're trying to figure out what to do for him. However,
Could you come to Canada?
Well, I offered to help him do that, but that's starting all over if you do that, and I would do my best. But
What's his last name?
Samoilov, Samoilov. And he has a YouTube thing called Inside Russia, in case you want to check him out. He's a good economist, and he spends about every day he's on a show, at least one show a day, and he spends about half of those talking about the Russian economy. And he's able to show that it's way worse off than they're letting on. And amazingly, the Western economists have not sufficiently picked up to the magnitude of the crisis that the Russians themselves are experiencing. Anyway, I'm not the person to talk about that, but I'm aware that I deflected the conversation some time ago.
I've dropped the link to Konstantin's Patreon in the chat, so please go there and donate what you can. It's a monthly thing, and it really helps Konstantin in his fight against the American government so that his family can be reunited. Thank you for that. And I think it is important that we follow up on Peter's suggestion to really mandate that and require that governments fulfill their promises from 1992. That's 32 years ago, to end fossil fuel subsidies. And it begins in our own country, and in particular, those who can write in America. We need to call on Elon Musk on social media, call him out and say, hey, you said you're going to end all fossil fuel subsidies. And, here's a $7 trillion one globally and about $2 trillion in the US. Start out with that one and put your money where your mouth is. Thanks.
I love that idea. Now, is there any way we can collectively do something to focus attention on, exactly that slogan? Elon, you say you're going to shut off all subsidies. How about doing fossil fuels today?
Yeah, I think we need to do it on social media. As David Fenton wrote, and I highly recommend the Climate Chat with Dan Miller 4 weeks ago. Actually, I had a nice call with David Fenton, and we're looking at collaborating on a well-funded public media campaign. But he says, look, what happens on your phones is what happens in the world. That's what we need to understand.
Brian, can you put a link to that recent the chat that you're talking about in there?
Yeah, I think Lynn may have already done it, but
I put one. Oh, you mean that YouTube, the recent one? Yeah, I'm Lynn, and I did put that one in. I haven't watched it yet, but I just saw that was a link from 11 days ago. Yeah.
Yeah, I think that sounds about right.
Okay.
I spoke with David in the last week or two, and it's looking very promising. He's working to raise funding, but he likes to say it's a propaganda war that we're facing. Mm-hmm. And the problem is there's only one team on the playing field, and it's not us. And that what is needed is a well-funded public relations campaign to teach the center right.
For any one outfit, I mean, you have a website or that you're referring to that I don't know anything about. Is that the place to go? If we all went to the same website, we would concentrate our puny efforts, such as it is, on one place. It might add up to a little bit, and it'd be great if there were one website that everybody in the world we would divert them to and say, go there, and sign there. And that might make some difference, but we're so diffused, unless we do.
I believe that's in formation. My understanding is that's in formation at the moment. And there have been historic efforts to do this, but not well funded. And fundamentally, there's one team on the playing field and it's not us. What we need is a well-funded campaign, a public relations campaign to educate the center right in America and other countries as to what climate change will do to their families. They may not be interested in climate change, but climate disruption is interested in them because it's going to affect their families, it's going to affect their properties, and it's going to affect their children's lives. And so fundamentally, once a well-funded public relations campaign is put forward, it's going to change politics in America and other countries because very few people in the center and the center right in particular understand really what climate change is going to do to their families. And that's what we need to get across.
Mm-hmm. Okay, good for you. Now, you are the big specialist on kelp and on phytoplankton in the ocean and so on. I just have come across, I think mostly on Substack now, there's a guy named Guico Toro or something like that.
I heard of Kiko, yes.
And
I know of Kiko.
He's been posting on stuff on Substack that's really related to your work or your angle on the oceans. And he is a dynamite writer. He is really a writer. So if maybe I'll post some of this stuff on our Substack, and if you guys go and subscribe to the Substack thing, maybe we'll get. Should I do that? Is that a good thing to do, Brian?
I think so. And I'd also drop your Substack link right in the chat here because people are using it. I'm grabbing every link that people are putting into the chat here. And I encourage you to save the chat afterwards and publish it along with this
We
recording.
will,
Thank you.
whenever I put up our edited version of this as a video, we put it on the website, and then there's you can see the chat there. I'll post that there.
I think it's good. And I just want to second what Peter has proposed, and that is there is no excuse for continuing government fossil fuel subsidies. No excuse whatsoever. That's just accelerating Armageddon. But I just added up the 2019 Canada bill, and it came up to more than $2.3 billion for 1 year.
Yeah.
So most of those are direct subsidies.
And in the form of what? Somebody sits down and writes them a check, or in the form of providing these pipelines? Because I would think that should be counted as a subsidy, isn't it?
Certainly, it would be in there. I didn't see much there on pipelines. What I did see is checks that the Canadian government are writing to the fossil fuel industry to prop them up.
Wow. How could they claim to need to be propped up?
Well, they call it, economic benefit, and they call it, environmental this and that. And it's, at the end of the day, it's just payments to fossil fuel companies. Even the mining, they're huge payments to mining industry, which in Alberta is mostly tar sands, oil and gas. So they want to encourage their primary industries, and that includes fossil fuel extraction. I think the first and biggest thing we should call for is exactly what Peter's done, and that is end fossil fuel subsidies and support the Citizens Climate Lobby globally, because they are the ones that are saying pay to pollute, create the carbon dividend. Alaska is a Republican state, and the oil dividend is just alive and well. In fact, you cannot pry the Alaska oil dividend from the cold, dead hands of the Republican citizens who are up there. Okay. So there's an example for you. And let's just apply that to all of America. And, the reality is Schultz, a Republican head of state, Secretary of State, Schultz said, look, it's not a tax if it's revenue neutral. And the point is the carbon dividend is revenue neutral. You charge a levy on carbon at its source, and you distribute it to every adult legal resident of the country on a per capita basis, which means you either pay to pollute or you get paid to actually take carbon dioxide out of the air and put it back in the ground where it came from.
Now, these are clear, because I'm not sure I understand the payment system. If you're paying people on a per capita basis, everybody gets the same amount back, right? Even whether they, as I think, where did Lynn go? She said she gets money from them, even though she rides a bike.
I don't pay for gas, so I don't pay the tax, and I get a rebate, but that's ending. Canada just, Mark Carney said the consumer carbon rebate is ending, and he's going to give people some kind of rebate in their income taxes, which has no connection to their carbon consumption, which isn't the point. It's very sad, but it's because of the conservative lobby axe the tax that's been going on for over a decade. They just smash it all the time and blame it for every hike in inflation, etc., which is it's not true, but you can't stop them from saying it, and the media repeats it, and so people think it. Yeah.
Well, that's the PR campaign. We're not even on the playing field, and we need to raise those funds. But I and the key thing is, it's not a tax. It's not a tax if it's revenue.
I spent more than 10 years working on getting the one in Canada, which we got, but then now we don't have it, the consumer part. We still have the industrial part. Hopefully that should be continued.
Yeah. I can give you a little input on the Canadian carbon tax thing, which applies to all other governments. So they get away with it. They get round it. For the past 15 years by saying that they will look at stopping inefficient energy subsidies. So I obviously took part in the Canadian government consultation, And do you know what they ended up doing? They ended up starting another consultation to decide what subsidies, what energy inefficient subsidies mean. So obviously that doesn't include the externalities. Obviously that puts the fossil fuel corporations off the hook. I mean, it's absolutely scurrilous, but of course it's a typical political thing, to say, oh yeah, we're going to stop fossil fuel subsidies. We've agreed to, but we are only going to stop or look at inefficient subsidies. So when you ask the Canadian government what that means, they say, we don't know. We are going to consult to try and find out. So, God, it's terrible.
Yeah.
Well, I think what needs to be done in addition to ending the subsidies is to end the super PACs in politics. Because, democracy is alive and well in America. Every dollar gets equal vote.
Okay. Yeah. Okay. Well, I certainly hope that we can find some way of coordinating a little better, and focusing our energies in a certain direction. It seems to me that is a perfect topic to do. That the subsidization of fossil fuels it's hard to. I would think that even the people who benefit from it will have a hard time giving any explanation that holds water, that is credible. So all you have to do is say that they're getting these subsidies, and people are going to say, what? I mean, why are they getting that? So I think it's a question of how to get public attention focused on that. Well, I don't know. I'm doing my best to try to get people focused on our monthly conversations. And I'm starting off, by the way, to a new system where we are now beginning to charge for the essays. Every time I make a forum, it's free, and it'll remain free as a video and audio file on several different platforms, on YouTube, on our website, and on Substack. But we also have an essay about each of these shows. And the reason is that most people, of course, can't afford an hour every so often to watch the whole show. And if they would like to know what sort of went on. So with a 1,000 or 1,200 word essay, we're able to sort of give them an idea of what was discussed in each of these forums. So those are only going on to the Substack account. And now, from beginning as of yesterday, if you want to read one of those essays, or you can start reading it. You can read a couple of hundred words, and then it will fade out unless you are a paying customer. So a paying subscriber can see all of the shows or the essays that we post, the complete list and so on, from now on. And that's going to be $8 a month US. And I expect everybody to do it, but I think a lot of people will. And to make it more attractive for people who want to put in that kind of money, it does help run our project, which of course it doesn't really have any income source regularly at all so far, except what people contribute. And what we're going to do is we now have a monthly membership meeting. Well, those have been just sort of the kind of town hall format that we're used to here, the monthly town hall. But in addition to the town hall, there's a special meeting for members, people who have subscribed, who are members of Project Save the World. Now we're going to include people who are also paying subscribers to Substack. So people who subscribe to Substack not only can read all of the essays, but also be invited to participate in these twice a month membership meetings. It'll be on the first Thursday of every month and the second Sunday of every month, from 12:30 p.m. to 2 p.m., which is not good for Brian, but most other people in Europe or North America can handle that kind of schedule. So it'll be available, and we're going to start having more of a program. It won't be just a Q&A. I mean, it won't be just a town hall type format for free discussion, but we will have bring in some of the speakers from previous shows for a Q&A session, so people can continue discussing the topics that were raised in the various shows. So we'll have an opportunity then to proceed with a real open conversation with some of the recent previous speakers. So that's going to be available. Brian, you have your hand up. You have a thought.
Peter, can you remind us where the 2 degrees and 2 billion people and 3 degrees and 4 billion people statistic was located? Because we'd like to get that out on our social media channels.
It was published January the 16th of this year, and it's called Planetary Insolvency, Finding Our Balance with Nature.
Thank you.
You have to go into an appendix, I believe, in order to find the 2 billion mortality at 2 degrees C and 4 billion at 3 degrees C. But that number is right on. I mean, the IPCC says we have 2.6 billion people in the world who are highly vulnerable to climate change. So, yeah, they're being written off, as are all the children in the world today. Anyway, thank you for the question. It really is a great paper. It has a lot of information in that on risk that you can't find anywhere else.
I'm worried that some of the problems required a high level of science and technology and mathematics. And I have to admit that if I look back this past month, my concern is we humans may simply be too damn stupid and too damn think-headed with our personal neuroses to actually learn the kind of mathematics we need to learn to have any idea what's going on. And that worries me a lot right now.
Well, if you have a solution, bring it forward. Charles, was that a finger you're putting up? You want to speak?
Yes. I just want to remind people of the horrible human rights and humanitarian situation in the world right now. And that nobody is really doing anything on the question of preventing wars, solving the traumas of previous wars. And that's critical if this planet is going to survive and if we are going to survive. And I think we need to talk about that a great deal more.
Well, God bless you for what you're doing, and the same for everybody else here. We all are doing, I think, the best we know to do. And I think there's value in getting together every month and finding out just how it's going and where maybe we can find some way of making more impact than we've had so far. Anyway, thank you all. We're over time. So come back in a month and the last Sunday of the month, and we will.
Thank you so much.
Thank you, man.
Together.
Thanks, Meta. Goodbye. Bye, everyone.
Thank you so much.